Alright, welcome back to part 3 of this Miata Resurrection build. We are going to start tackling this apron here. We're going to rip that out today. That's my biggest plan for the day, and then also coordinate something with the guy from Craigslist who has the parts car that I'm going to be taking these parts off of. So yeah, let's get started with taking off the tire, the wheel, and some other parts up in the apron there to kind of gauge what we got to do in order to take that apron off. Without further ado, let's get to it. And we are back. So I ended up going to see that other Miata, the donor Miata, and I was able to actually convince the guy to let me chop off the whole front end of the Miata, or the donor vehicle. So I have basically from like here forward off the donor section, the donor vehicle. So that's exciting. I can actually begin to take this off, take all the pieces I need off of that other piece, and then get that ready for being welded onto here. So anyways, yeah, I think what I'm going to do now is, in order to pull the rest of this apron off, I literally have to take out the brake booster and the master cylinder for the clutch in order to get my drill in there. Which kind of sucks. I gotta do all this just to get a drill bit in there, so that I can get to the sandwich plate that goes over the apron piece where it meets up to the back of the, or the front of the firewall. So that's the next step. I'm gonna start unbolting that master cylinder and the brake booster, and we'll see you in a bit. This is what I was talking about last night, or before I went to bed. This is the whole front end from another donor Miata, and literally just took a chop saw and cut off the frame ties and took the whole front end off. This is off that one that was kind of rusty, But I mean, you can tell by looking at this here, this piece is pretty gone, so I'm gonna have to figure something out with that. I don't even remember what that's to be honest with you. I think it's to the bumper for some support for the bumper. I forget, but I'll have to look at a diagram of that. But anyways, yeah. So now I can start to disassemble this. After I figure out that apron, I'll disassemble all this, get the pieces that I need off of it, scrap what I don't need. What kind of sucks about this is it's a little bit tweaked up, but it's not horrible. I mean, you can see there's a little bend right there. But when I have it all off, I'll be able to mend it back into shape pretty easily, so I wasn't really too worried about it. It looked like it was, and something got hit with this front end here, but like I said, it was real light. It was mainly the fender that was all messed up. And I think it just pulled this in the event of that. So yeah, no big deal. Be able to tweak it back into shape, make it look all purty again, sand it up, and then get these ready for paint and welding. And then once we get that on the new setup, we'll be good to go. Yeah, so let's do some more work. Guys, don't hate me, but I did a little bit of work off camera here. So I got the new apron panel, found that on eBay. It was at a Miata dealership up in New Hampshire. The guy had it for like 16 years. It's a brand new OEM. He just never used it, and I picked it up for like half the cost of what it would from Mazda. So that was a pretty sick deal. It just took about 6 hours of my time to get up to New Hampshire and back. No big deal. It's well worth it. So yeah, all I did with that was I took a Scotch-Brite red Brillo pad, and I just scuffed the entire thing. That way it's ready for paint when I go to mount this in there and weld it in. I don't have to do that after the fact. This guy, I just kind of did a couple holes for the spot welds when I go to weld that in. But as of right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit every single piece that's going to make contact with that, as far as where the frame meets up to the apron. And I'm going to take some weld through primer, and I'm going to put on about 2 coats of that, and then get it ready for being welded up. So the process for that is I talked to the body shop guy. He says he usually will put everything, put down the weld through primer on all the bare metal, the stuff that's going to be inaccessible after the panel's on. Get a good coat on there, and then put your panel up in place, get it to where you want it to be, with some vice grips, clamp it down, take measurements, make sure that it's good to go. Use some self-tapping screws, screw it down so it doesn't move, and then take a sandblasting gun and hit each hole. That way it makes a nice perfect spot, clean bare metal spot inside that hole and around that hole. And that's where you would weld up to. So I was like, oh, that's a good idea. So that's the next step for what I got to do here. I was advised that I should probably have a fender before I go to finish weld this thing in, because what you're supposed to be able to do with that is, once you have it all mocked up in place, a couple tack welds on there to make sure it doesn't go anywhere, and the set screws, you would then hang your fender and make sure that panel gap is good. But I did notice that with this door, that hinge is kind of bad, so I'm gonna have to do something there. I'm gonna have to replace that hinge. It's just sagging a little bit, so that will kind of throw off that gap if I were to go hang that fender, thus throwing off all my measurements up here. You know, you don't want to work this in relation to that, because it would screw up all your measurements. Yeah. So anyways, let's get to putting down some weld through primer and get this thing ready to weld on. Guys, everything's bolted kind of back together. Obviously the bumper's off, but everything's lining up perfect. It's great. It's ready for sanding, so I got to sand down basically the whole car. I'm going to respray the entire car, make sure it's all uniform in color. That way it's got a fresh coat of clear coat everywhere. Fresh coat of paint, basically. It'll come out good. So stay tuned for that, guys. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video. Thank you.